Welcome back. Time for more Tales from the Swamp. Today, we're going to be reading The Hope of the Redoran by Turiel Neareth. And by the way, I swear I didn't choose this book just because Turiel sounds like Toriel. Alright. One of the few magical arts the Sigics of Artaeum have kept to themselves, away from the common spells and schools of the Mages Guild, is the gift of divination. Despite this, or perhaps because of it, omens and prophecies abound in Tamriel. Some of substance, others of pure folly, that's right, but still, and still others so ambiguous as to be unverifiable. There are still other prophecies kept secret, from the prophecies of Drojuzad and elsewhere, and the Nerevarine in Morrowind, to the Elder Scrolls themselves. The Nord nobility have a tradition of having omens read for their children. In general, these readings are of the obscure variety. One of my acquaintances told me that her parents were told, for example, that their daughter would have her life rescued by a snake, and so gave her the name Serpentkin in a special ceremony. And this young lady, Aria Valcor Serpentkin, was indeed saved by a snake many years later, when an assassin creeping on her stepped on a dansworm viper. Yeah, Pastel. That's good, isn't it? Yeah, good girl. Occasionally, omens seemed to be almost purposefully misleading, as if Boethia had crafted them as traps. I recall one particularly. Many years ago, a male child was born into House Redoran. It was a very difficult birth, and the mother was delirious and near death by the time it was over. She chanted just as her son came into the world, and she passed from it. Fortune has smiled this day, not frowned. My child will be mighty in mind and in arm. He shall bring hope to House Redoran. Neither spell nor blade shall hurt the man, nor illness nor poison cause any harm. His blood shall never drop on the ground. The boy, named Andes, was indeed extraordinary. He was never ill and never suffered so much as a scratch all through his childhood. He was also quite intelligent and strong, which, combined with his invulnerability, caused many to call him, after his mother's omen, the Hope of the Redoran. Of course, any who is called the Hope of the Redoran will eventually Sorry, Pastel just rolled into my microphone. Develop some taint of impertinence, and it wasn't long before he had enemies. His worst enemy was his cousin Aethan, who had borne much abuse at the hands of Andes. Primary among the grudges was that Aethan had been sent to Rehad to complete his education at Andes's insistence. When Aethan returned from Hammerfell, it was because of the death of his father, who had also been a counselor of the house. Aethan was old enough to take his seat in the council, but Andes claimed the seat as well, saying that his cousin had been gone too long from Morrowind, and didn't understand politics as he did. The majority of the house agreed with Andes, wanting to see the Hope of the Redoran rise quickly. Aethan exercised his right to combat his cousin for the seat. No one thought he had any chance of winning, of course, but the battle was scheduled to commence the following morn. Andes whored and dined and drank with the counselors that night, confident that his place in the house was secured, and the hopeful new dawn of House Redoran was rising. Aethan retired to his castle with his friends, Andes's enemies, and his servants he had brought from Hammerfell. Aethan and his friends were discussing the duel morosely when one of his old teachers, a warrior called Shardy, came into the hall. She had grown quite proud of her student over the years of Hammerfell, proud enough to accompany him across the Empire to his family's lands, and wanted to know why they had so little confidence in his odds in battle. They explained to her Andes's uncommon blessings and the nature of his mother's omen. If he can't be harmed by disease, poison, magicka, and his blood can never be spilled, what hope have I of ever besting him? Cried Aethan. Have you remembered nothing I taught you? Replied Shardy. Is there no weapon you can think of that will slay without blood? Are swords and spears and arrows the only items in your arsenal? Ethan quickly realized the weapon Shardy was speaking of, but it seemed absurd. Not only absurd, but pathetic and primitive. Still, it was the only hope he had. All that night, Shardy trained him in the art and techniques, showing him the various swings and stances her people had developed in Albion Gora, counterattacks, feints, and blocks imported from Yakuta, the classic one- and two-handed grips for the most ancient weapon in history. The cousins faced one another the next morning, and never have two combatants looked so unevenly matched. Andis's entrance brought a great cheer, for not only was he much beloved as the hope of the Redoran, but as his victory was a foregone conclusion, most wanted to be in a good standing with him. His shining mail and blade drew admiration and awe. By contrast, Ethan drew a gasp of surprise and only a smattering of polite applause. He appeared costumed and armed like a barbarian. As Shardy had suggested, Ethan allowed Andis to attack first. The hope of the Redoran was eager to finish the battle and take the power he deserved quickly. The blade pushed by Andis's mighty arm slashed across Ethan's chest, but shallowly, and before it could be counterswung, Ethan knocked it back with his own weapon. When Ethan attacked and wounded Andis, the hope of the Redoran was so surprised by being hurt, for the first time in his life, he dropped his sword. The less said about the end of the battle, the better. Suffice it to say that Ethan, wielding a simple club, battered Andis to death without spilling a drop of blood. Ethan took his father's seat as counselor, and it was then said that the hope and the omen referred to Ethan, not Andis. Oh, plot twist. After all, had Andis not tried to take the counselor seat away from his cousin, Ethan not being very ambitious, might have never tried to get it. It can certainly be argued that way, I suppose. Oh my. Oh, Inigo, what did you think of the story? Cabbage, you've got my back? Thank you. Oh, that was a good story. There you are, Cabbage. I wanted to read another Morrowind-themed book because of the Solstheim DLC. The Hope of the Redoran is a book that can be found in Oblivion, Morrowind, and Skyrim. Yay! Thank you so much for joining me. Have a very comfy night. Bye!